Hey, Evan.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here with
Of course.
you.
Yes, for sure. I've been so excited for this episode. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. So, I know a bunch of people are tuning in on both Airmate and LinkedIn. So, if you have not seen me on one of our live streams for some reason, I'm the community manager here at RevGenius. If you are watching and you're not already a member, go to revgenius.com. We have a free Slack community of like 35,000 people in tech. It's a super awesome place to be, and we do free events like this every single week. Alrighty, I'm going to turn it over to you, Evan. Tell everyone where you're from, a little bit about you, what we're talking about today, and everything.
Of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Evan Patterson. My pronouns are he, him, his. You can call me Evan or Ev. Either one is fine. I am a community marketing lead over at Phrasey. We are a generative AI content platform for driven enterprise content marketers. So feel free to check us out. I'm also the CMO and co-host of The Other Side of Sales, fractional VP of Sales and Marketing at Rocket Science Branding, and an advisor for a multitude of startups such as Outplay, Chili Piper, and others, as well as being a DEI advocate. So yeah, hi everybody. Also, I'm in Chicago, so if you're here, say hi.
Nice. Oh, yes. If you guys are tuning in, definitely leave in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from. We always love to know. All right. So today we have a lot of stuff to cover, but this is
Yes.
definitely one of my favorite topics. I know it's something that you're super passionate about as well, which is personal branding. More specifically, actually creating a personal brand that really stands out, that actually um, like enables you to do a lot more in your career than you might otherwise. Really leveraging that brand to like grow your career, land your dream job, create a side business, really anything that you aspire to do.
Yeah.
So, I just kind of want to start out with like first, like what is a personal brand and what's kind of included in that?
I think there's multiple ways to define a personal brand because it really depends on what your intended goals are, right? So for me, I don't have a college degree. Anybody who's heard me on other shows has heard me mention that too. I dropped out like 22 minutes in, like to the minute, right? And I was like, this is BS. And that's
Mhm.
a whole nother topic for another day. But like I always got so frustrated with
Yeah.
even my friends and stuff that would tell me how what they were doing at work and all of their successes were siloed into like the people who have worked with
Mm,
them or their clients. And I'm like, you're doing so well, why the hell aren't you talking about this publicly? And
yeah.
all of their learnings were either from college or from work. Or just by doing. It was never through community, it was never through networking.
Mm,
And obviously, like I was born in the mid 90s. I'm right on the cusp of millennial and Gen Z. So like, traditional networking of like going to networking events and being born
yeah.
into a well-connected family, like those days are not, those days are dying really quick. It's not as important as it used to be. So, because
Mm,
now there's so many ways to network. So it just got really frustrating that I just knew so many people around my own
yeah.
age that were not taking advantage of personal branding as a way to do all the things I just mentioned. So I was like, well, I'm not going to make the same mistake that everybody else is making.
Mm,
And I really focused on, making sure that I was building my career the same way that people build a business or a product in public. I was
yeah.
going to document it publicly. Why put it in a journal if I can put it on social media and, build a community and a network that supports me and my mission and my goals, and
Mm,
obviously also by proxy, them.
yeah. So I want to address a lot of concerns that I've heard from people, like related to growing your personal brand. One from just being at a current company, let's say, and not having a
Yeah.
manager that supports what you're doing online. People sometimes feel like, maybe it will affect my job search in a negative way if it looks like I'm like putting too much time into this outside of my full-time role. Like, can you talk to us a little bit about that, kind of how to avoid, what to do if you are in a situation like that?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the time part before we talk about the manager part.
Mm,
So for the time part, just be very understanding of what kind of ROI you're getting here, right?
yeah.
So For people where social media is not an actual part of the job itself, but it is a part of your long-term career advancement,
Mm.
know that you're not going to spend as much time or put as much effort and also get the same number of followers and views and comments
Yeah.
as someone like me, who this is not just for my own personal brand, but it's
Mhm.
also for what I do for a living, right? I
Yeah.
am the Mickey Mouse, right? Like I am a bunch of y'all are gonna hate this word, but a lot of community marketers evangelists are in-house influencers. I know you hate that
Mhm.
word, y'all, but it's the truth, right? You know, if you're an engineer,
Yeah.
that might not be part of your job, but you'll still benefit from personal branding. So just know you can't compare apples to apple pie. Okay, that's the first thing
Mhm.
throughout the game. So make sure when you consume content about excuse me, how to build a personal brand, you're really asking who is this made for? Was it made for
Yeah.
me or was it made for the Evans of the world? Right?
Yeah.
The second bit is it's a long game. If you want instant gratification, regardless of all the things you just mentioned, log off now.
Mm.
This entire thing is not for you. Yeah, you're striving for mediocrity, and that congratulations. We need people in the world to strive for mediocrity. But this is not the call for those people. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to what kind of manager you have and them
Mhm.
having an issue with it, really understand what they mean by having an issue. This
Yeah.
is a question in itself, right? Like, are you breaking social media policies? Is the social media policy one that should be broken, or are you just not following the rules? Um,
Mm.
there are some things of like, perception being a reality, as much as I hate that. There are things that like, there might be things at work you really want to talk about publicly, and you might genericize it and stuff,
Mm.
but it might come around to bite you in the butt because newsflash, not everyone is dumb. There are people that are smart enough to connect the dots, right?
Yeah.
So you've gotta really ask yourself how much BS you're willing to sign up for, and only you will
Mm.
know the answer to that. If you do have a manager that is 100% against you doing it, you're not going to change that. You either need to
Yeah.
come with some homework and proof points as to like why this should be a part of your job and why there should be time carved out, and come with numbers
Mm.
for all of that.
Mm.
And that could be an entire webinar in itself. Or the most common thing that I see: quit and work elsewhere.
Yeah. Honestly. I totally agree with that. I think it's such a tricky situation, especially I think right now just with like the job market in general, like feeling very shaky. I think a lot of people are a lot more hesitant to like leave bad situations that they would maybe normally otherwise. But I think it is
Yeah,
really important if someone's like not letting you grow and develop.
especially if it's part of your job, right? This is Rev
Mhm.
Genius, right? Almost every single person here can find a way to integrate personal branding as to
Yeah.
part of their job, right? We're not talking to, there might be some people that listen to this that are developers and engineers or have a background in that,
Hmm.
but if you are in a go-to-market position, there is a way to make this part of your job. And with
Mm.
all due respect to you and all due disrespect to the bad manager we're talking about, um, like the company is going to be the next Sears. They are the
Yeah.
Titanic right before hitting the iceberg. Any
Mm.
company that is against you building your personal brand is,
Yeah.
5 years ago, it would have been, oh, maybe they don't know how this helps the company. It's 2023. If this
Yeah.
isn't obvious to you, I do not know how you're in business. So, like Kimberly Knoll said in the chat, yeah, you're probably
Mhm.
not going to win that one. Yeah, you probably aren't. You probably
Yeah.
aren't. So, if you have to bite your tongue and deal with it because the job market is bizarre right now and tough, do what you got to do for you and your family and take care of yourself. But I would
Mhm.
highly encourage you to, I would start looking. I really
Yeah.
would. You're not going to win that battle. And honestly, the ship is about to sink if it's not already sinking.
Yeah, Jay said something really awesome in the chat. He said, if anything, I think the shaky job market, which is unstable, would have me looking at how to use my brand to get supplemental income. You can be the best employee and buy the book and still get laid off anyways, which is totally true and something that I definitely want to cover.
Yeah, career
Um,
cushioning is a massive thing right now, and if you're an
mm,
employer has a problem with your employees' career cushioning, F off.
yeah.
Seriously. Yeah.
Okay, so I do kind of want to backtrack just a little bit to what you had mentioned, which is that depending on, what sort of role you're in, it is going to affect like how and what strategies you use to grow your brand online. But
Yes.
kind of talking about people who are in more revenue related roles, which is most of our members at Rev Genius. So it's going to be like sales, success, revenue operations, like looking at that, if it's not strictly like a responsibility of their role, like what kinds of content can they be posting online? What should they be focusing on? Like, where can they start with making content?
This sounds very hypocritical of me over here, like making content about personal branding. But go and consume content that has nothing to do with personal branding and everything to do with like
Mm,
corporate branding and content marketing,
mm,
because the same logic of like having a brand for a
yeah.
business applies to a person, right? The same logic of product differentiation, well, it's human
Mm,
differentiation, right? Having a
mm,
narrative, having a vibe and an aesthetic to it all, having content pillars, right? These are all things that content marketers, community marketers, product marketers have to know to do for their
mm,
jobs. Salespeople typically don't need to know these things, but they might have heard these words bounced around, right? I really recommend, like just learning, marketing 101, learning how to create a content strategy and content pillars. You don't need to know it enough to get the content marketer job. You don't need to know it on that level, right? Like you just need to know enough to grasp that concept for yourself. You don't need to get the calendar out and create
mm,
spreadsheets and all that and Sprout Social. Like you don't need all that, right? But it will support you to understand
yeah.
the fundamentals of marketing and content creation and strategy. Because all these questions, like, well, what do I talk about? What do I talk about? It's less about what and why and how and
Mm,
when and where, and you learn the answers to those things by
yeah.
understanding marketing.
Got it. Okay, so kind of going back to what kinds of content. So once someone has already done a little bit of research, like they've kind of developed what they want their brand to focus around, like what sorts of things that they want to talk about. I know that there's a lot that's been going around, especially on LinkedIn, like talking about, okay, like document what you're doing, which I
Mhm.
think can be really good advice, but can also be sort of like vague and confusing advice of like, okay, like what about my role should I be sharing? What should I maybe not be sharing? Like, how many
Yeah, yeah.
mistakes can I post to LinkedIn in a day? Because that's like, because I'm not posting all my mistakes on LinkedIn, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But like,
As
talk to us about that.
yeah, I don't talk about all my mistakes too. If I
Mhm.
did, y'all be like, "Jesus, Evan, get it together, girl. Get it together."
Mm,
Right?
I feel the same way. So
Right? Yeah,
just
so
glad you know
you
I'm all
Yeah, so you talk about your mistakes when it provides value, okay?
mm,
And you got to keep in mind, here's where people on LinkedIn really mess it up. Here's the real tea,
mm,
okay? Like people will talk about what they did wrong because it makes them seem human. And I'm
mm,
like, okay, come on, virtue signaling. You are human. Get it. You breathe, newsflash, So we're talking about, you want to demonstrate your human side of it, but you
mm.
also want to demonstrate the human side with while adding value, right?
Yeah.
So when I talk about a mistake that I've made in the workplace, I make sure it's also a mistake that I've made in the workplace that I can talk about in enough
Mm,
detail that is relevant to my audience,
yeah.
right? Which also goes back to the point of like understanding marketing. That also implies I need to understand my audience, right? I
Mm,
need to know what they give a damn about. Why does Zaya follow me on LinkedIn? Why
yeah.
does Kimberly follow me on LinkedIn, right? I need
Mhm.
to understand why people are here, right?
Yeah.
So that helps me figure out which mistake to talk about on LinkedIn. That helps me how to talk about the mistake on LinkedIn, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and of course, there's also like NDAs are a thing, right?
Yeah.
So, if there's a slither of doubt that this is going to land you, your company, or client in trouble, I promise you, there's probably 10 other things you're fucking up that you could probably talk about on LinkedIn that won't get you in
Yeah.
trouble. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. You're a human being. You can find something else to talk about. Also,
Mm,
I have a background doing stand-up comedy. Every person, oh, I hope every person knows that Kathy Griffin and Wanda Sykes, all these comedians, Whitney Cummings, you do know that 90% of what they're saying is a lie, right? It's truth adjacent. There's some truth rooted in there, but it's an exaggeration, right?
mm,
It's okay if the mistake you made is truth adjacent. Ain't no one
mm,
out here background checking every single post. Okay? You're right, you don't need to make it larger than it is. You don't need to
Yeah,
fabricate. But,
of course.
like, okay, well, okay, I didn't make the mistake last week, but I did make the mistake 3 years ago. I can talk
Yeah.
about it as if it was last week. It's
Mm.
okay, y'all. It's no one's gonna and if you're bothered by that, you have I wish that that was a big deal to me. Your life is so privileged, and if
Oh my
that's what
gosh.
upsets you, congratulations. You are winning.
Okay, so there are a few questions in the chat that I want to make sure we answer kind of before we move on.
Fire away.
Which are so Zaya asked, "Hey Zaya, thank you so much for watching." All right, so he asked, "What are the differences between becoming a company billboard and a personal brand? I see a lot of people that call this personal branding."
Yeah, just like I mentioned at the beginning of this whole event, personal branding it comes for different reasons, different intentions, different flavors, different styles, right?
Mm,
So, if you're cooking, you might be cooking for you might be cooking for your spouse, you might be cooking for your kids, you might be cooking for a catering event, for a restaurant, right? So you're still cooking at the end of the day, right? So personal
mhm,
branding is the same way. You might be personal branding for you, for your pipeline, for your AE team, for your SDR team, to recruit, to grow your business. So being the company billboard, being the
mm,
mascot, being the in-house influencer, that
yeah,
is one way to do personal branding. So I wouldn't say there's a difference. That is a type of personal branding. That is a personal branding strategy. That is
mhm,
an approach that some people do because that's just what they're good at and they like to do it. That is an
mm,
approach some people do because that is in their JD, right? So and there's some people that do that they're setting an example of how to do that, and then there's combinations, right? So
mhm.
the list goes on. So there is no difference, but that is a type of personal branding.
Got it.
That is a thing. Yeah, that's when you're trying to make your name synonymous with a brand that is
Mhm.
not you. So when you think of Bill Gates, you think Microsoft.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
feel like there are like what are the pros and cons to doing something like that? Especially when like you're not a founder or you're maybe not, a C-suite like executive. Um, we're not all Bill Gates of
Yeah.
Microsoft. Like, should our
I sure
personal
as hell ain't.
brands be, yeah. It's like should our personal brands be at least somewhat separate and just kind of like lead back to this company or like is there somewhere that most people should draw the line, or it really depends, like, on the individual person?
I think your last point where it really depends on the individual person, what the goals are of you and or of the business.
Mm,
Like I have a friend that is an engineer. He's a software programmer, and he does allude to what kind of company he works at, but the
mm,
goal is not to benefit his company; it's to benefit himself. It's to
yeah,
provide context as to what kind of engineer he is. Right? Engineer is such a large word, and he works in the world of like gaming software. Right? So he wants to
mm,
let people like I am an engineer behind the engines that game developers use to make video
yeah,
games. So knowing where he works and having that brand affinity of that company provides
mm,
context, right? So you know what kind of person someone is a little bit based on where they work.
mhm,
So, just as much as you can learn about the company based on who works there, right?
got
So,
it.
in my role, I'm the latter. I want you to learn about the company because of
Mm,
me. Where in my friend's scenario, you want to learn a little bit about him because of where he works.
mm,
So it's less about pros and cons and more about
mhm,
why you're doing it and how you're doing it. So, unless you're working for the DoD and you're not allowed to talk about what you do for a living, I can think of very few examples where you completely separate the two here.
yeah,
When we're talking about professional personal branding, but tying that in some way, whether it's the whole package or just a little bit, will help you.
mhm,
And of course, have multiple personal brands is a thing. You can have multiple personal brands.
mhm,
A personal brand is just nothing but a side hustle in a business. If you can
yeah,
have more than one side hustle, you can have more than one personal brand. I have friends that are suited up software developers by day, but then they're sex workers by night. And so obviously they have two different social media presences, right? And
mhm,
it's not to hide. They tell their coworkers that's what they do at the tech company that they work at. They're not ashamed of it or afraid of it. And by the way, it's real work. And if you disagree,
mhm,
log off. But the point being, like, they're going where their audience is, and their
yeah,
audience have very little overlap, right? So
yeah,
once again, it all comes back to what you're trying to do.
mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so in terms of like creating that unforgettable brand that people are going to like recognize, they're going to want to follow you on LinkedIn, they're going to go out of their way to like interact and engage with all of your content. Like in terms of starting points, how do you feel about the niche down advice? Especially on LinkedIn. Like, should we have kind of one topic on this professional platform? Like, how much personal opinions or like thoughts should you be sharing? Like, talk to us about
Yeah,
this.
great question. So niche down. I don't like how the niche down thing says you gotta talk about one topic.
Mm, yeah.
Humans aren't one topic.
Mm,
Like, even Phrasey doesn't talk about one topic. Like, we're talking about email subject lines here. We're talking about push notifications here. We're talking about overall
mm,
marketing strategy here. We're talking about what is generative AI here. And then now we're talking about the ethics of everything we just said, basically, right?
yeah.
There's right. So if a brand is allowed to be multifaceted for a company, your personal brand should also be multifaceted.
Mm,
The key is making sure that they all make sense and they communicate well together,
yeah.
right? So I'm a community marketer, right? But people also know me for my social selling. People also know me for
Mm,
personal branding. People also know me for my emphasis on DE&I, not just
yeah.
in marketing, but in business and in hiring and how we function. It's not even about
Mm,
DEI campaigns. It's not even about like creating
yeah.
ERGs, right? So it's it's about my day to day, right? So,
Mm,
but you and I both know, and anybody who follows me for more than 5 minutes can quickly connect the dots. That's like, oh,
yeah.
I see why he's known for this and this. The keyword is and,
Mm,
not this, right? So
got it.
the niche down content preaches the emphasis on the word this or that, when
Mm,
the true mastery comes from the word and. Very
mm,
little to
okay.
do with what's around the word and. So,
Yeah.
it's about creating that big picture. Think of like Beyonce. You think of strong female empowerment. You think of regalness. And you
Mm,
think of high budget music videos. And you think of some almost like, I don't want to say aloofness, but like an exclusivity to her, right? She
mm,
doesn't go on a ton of talk shows, which
yeah.
makes her seem grander, right? And you also see she knows that she's really good at what she does, so she
Mm,
doesn't market her albums. She just drops them. She surprises
yeah.
them, right? You also know that she all of her if you looked at all of her albums or all of her artwork, it has followed the exact same patterns that jewelry companies and luxury designer
Mm,
brands use, right?
yeah.
She's putting herself in that same caliber, right? Now, as I'm talking, have you noticed I keep saying
Mhm,
and these are all completely different things, right?
mhm,
Just like different ingredients in a quesadilla, but you put them together and it tastes amazing. So that is the whole point, is you want to
mhm,
create a well-rounded picture of yourself. Otherwise, you might blow up for a week, but people are going to get
yeah,
bored of you real fast.
for sure. Alrighty, so I wanna go back to the chat. So it has been going crazy, which is awesome to see. So, okay, so Kimberly asked, are there some questions you can ask in the interviewing or job search process to identify if a potential organization will be supportive of personal branding efforts?
Definitely. And actually, this is probably one of the easiest things to vet for, shockingly, because you'll see people at the company doing this already, right? If
Mm,
if there's
yeah.
a lot of people at the company, and by a lot, I'm like, let's use that word loosely here, but like if there's a significant or substantial number of people based on like, oh, there's 30 people who work there and like 5 or 6 are like active on social,
Mhm,
that's a good sign. Yeah,
yeah.
especially if you're seeing variety in the job titles. It's not just C-suite, right?
Mm,
That's bonus
okay.
points for that, right? So, and keep in mind, certain job titles are more likely to be socially active than others, right? The
Mhm,
stereotype of an engineer, right? The
yeah.
stereotype of a developer, they're not going to be on LinkedIn. They're going to be on some Reddit or GitHub forum, and they're going to be talking and nerding
Mhm,
out with each other. They're not trying to make it make sense to the whole world. They're only trying to
yeah.
talk to each other, right? So, so keep that in mind, that there might be people that have a strong personal brand, but you're
Mhm,
just not on the platform that they're on.
yeah.
And that's fine. That's fine. You might not be, you're trying to get an SDR job. Of course you're not going to see the
Yeah.
engineered content, right? So just keep that in mind. So
Mhm,
I would, for people who are rev genius and revenue roles, look for other people in revenue roles from all the
mhm.
way down to the bottom, all the way to the top, already doing that. Because quite honestly, that'll give you the answer better than the interview can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
what you mentioned about like specifically looking for people who are not in C-suite roles because that is something that I know a lot of people who I've talked to on LinkedIn who are in like those SDR, AE, or like, very like early in their management careers, getting into issues with creating a personal brand, but then it's like the higher ups at that company post on LinkedIn like 80 times a day, you know? And
yeah.
there's no problem with it then. So I think that that's really awesome advice and not really something that I thought about like that directly. Um, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex asked, how do you mobilize on a personal brand without looking like a narcissist?
So, okay, contrary to popular
Love
belief, I don't
that.
think narcissism is inherently bad. So there's also that. I'm proud to say I'm a narcissist. It's like I like my own post. Why? Of course I like it. I wrote it.
Yeah,
So
of
right.
course. It's gonna, you know.
So yeah, I'm a narcissist. If you want to call me that, that's great. I think that there's a big difference between bragging and
Yeah,
broadcasting, you know? Um, and if you're gonna achieve something, talk about how you achieved it, you know?
yeah.
If you achieve something, talk about the parts that weren't hard for you, you know?
Mhm,
And yeah, I've had and I know there's gonna be at least 2 to 5% of people that listen to this, like, well, Evan, well, what if it came easy to me? And I'm not trying to be an asshole, but like it did come naturally and easy to me. Talk
mhm.
about that, Ben.
Yeah,
Talk about the fact that I would love to tell you where I struggled, but I really like I'm not even trying to be a jerk. I really can't explain where I struggled because it came naturally to me. Um, and because there are people in the world that need to hear that, right?
yeah.
Someone's going to not like you. Someone's going to think you're being better than thou. The amount of times I'll get a post from I get DMs from people all the time. God, Evan, you just really full of yourself. But at the
Yeah.
same day, in the same 5 minutes, I'll get a DM from somebody going, "Oh my God, because of you, I landed this
Yeah.
dream job," or because of you,
Mhm.
like I don't feel crazy now. I feel heard, right?
Exactly.
Like these things, right? Like you're going to have haters. You're going to
Yeah.
have haters. So it's okay to talk about yourself. I think as a society, we teach people that you have to talk about the other person. I don't talk
Mhm.
about other people. I don't ask questions about them because I'm not them. I think the most ignorant
Yeah.
thing I can do is talk about somebody else's experiences. So I'm not going to. It's ignorant. So I'm the subject matter expert to me. So of course I'm going to talk about
Yeah.
what I know. So, that there's 1,000 different ways. I could go on a 6-hour tangent on this, but I wouldn't really wouldn't worry that much.
Yeah.
You're gonna piss somebody off. It's gonna happen. But over time you'll figure out through trial and error
Mhm.
um, what kind of BS you get by doing something, and then you'll be able to ask yourself, what kind of BS do I want to sign up for this week? And
Yeah.
you don't have to be me who like invites it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Avinash, I'm sorry if that's not how you pronounce it. Um, okay, so he asked, can I use my personal brand to generate clients for my side gig while still having a regular job? I don't want this to be a red flag to my employers.
So I don't know what your company culture is at your employer's place, because I can't determine what they are going to call a red flag. I don't
Mhm.
think it's a red flag. You probably shouldn't think it's a red flag, but we can't control what they're going to think, right? I
Mhm.
would also, if your side hustle is complementary to where you work, there's very little
Mhm.
reason, if any, for your employer to have a problem with this. So with that in mind, if they do, they're an idiot. Please secure other employment. That will be the only solution. I hate to break it to you.
Mhm.
If your side hustle has nothing to do with your primary job, but it happens to live on the same platform as your primary
Mhm.
job, you're in a tricky situation. I understand that.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to really learn like the basics of marketing and find a way to connect the dots, to be quite honest. You're
Mm.
going to have to find some way to forge it. So maybe the services in the ICP aren't the same, or similar or tangential, or there's no overlap in the ICP, but maybe the mood and the vibe and the aesthetic of your brands, you can make them complementary, to each other.
Got it.
So that way it doesn't seem so haphazard, right? Or you don't,
Mhm.
who says you have to talk about where you work? Who says you have to even do that at
Yeah.
all? So I would either find a way to connect the dots or just pick one or the other when it comes to talking online. The
Mhm.
easiest solution is if your side hustle and your personal brand for that side hustle is on a completely
Yeah.
separate platform. Because then any opinion of the bosses, they're just being a control freak, and they
Yeah.
really need to unpack that in therapy. Somebody
So
clearly didn't hold them enough when they were a child.
oh my god. Okay, so, oh my god, I forgot what I was gonna ask. What was I gonna literally just, like, fell out of my head. Oh,
What we were
okay.
talking about.
Yes, go into therapy. Um, okay,
Yes.
so if someone,
I'm in
um
therapy too, so I'm not knocking it, y'all.
honestly, therapy is, like, the best career hack ever. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Oh my god, yes.
Um, it for real is. Um, okay, hold on, because I just forgot what I was saying for the second time.
Okay, we were
It'll
talking
come back
about
to me.
therapy, questions of personal branding, bouncing, create an unforgettable
Oh,
brand.
okay. Okay, okay. So if someone does have a side hustle and then they also have a career, but they're not totally sure like where they want to put the majority of their energy, like should they be focusing a little bit more on like growing their career, but then they also have this side project that they're really passionate about, and they do have them both on the same platform, like should they separate them? Should they pick like a main focus, or can things be kind of 50-50?
That's a loaded question. It really depends on the person. If you
Mhm.
are early and young in your career, if you got to talk to a career coach at that point,
Yeah.
because it might, like, when there are times, like, I don't know if people notice, but I've been slowing down my content because I am at a
Mhm.
point in my career where I have some career goals for myself that require
Yeah.
me to dedicate more of my personal energy, time,
Mhm.
stamina, the list goes on, into just getting better at that, right?
Yeah.
Um so, it's just knowing what's the priority in your life, not just in your
Mhm.
business. So if the ROI from putting pause or slowing down or putting less effort into it
Mhm.
is there so you to focus on something else, then do that. That's fine. You can always come back to it later or ramp things back up later. You don't
Mhm.
have to be. I hate the whole like consistency mindset that they preach,
Yeah.
because while I understand, like you and I both get it, like, from a marketing standpoint, yes, consistency is important, but
Yeah.
from a human being perspective, that's not
Yeah.
practical.
No, and it doesn't always make sense to like just pick one consistent thing to do. Like for a while, I was posting like multiple times a day, but right now it does not make any sense to do that. Like for the exact same reasons that you mentioned. It's like I only have so much bandwidth, and you can only focus on so many things in life at one time. Um,
Yeah,
but I
give
think
yourself
that that's
permission.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to try to balance everything. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on like scheduling content in advance, especially if you're trying to just post like a few times a week? Like, do you have any tips around that? Um,
For people who are marketers, for people who this is a part of their job, to have a strong
mhm,
personal brand, it's a part of their role, right? Or maybe you're an SDR, or maybe it's not a part of your role, but your boss is like, "What? Clearly, you're making leads off of it, so keep doing
mhm,
it." Right? Yeah, it will benefit you to either A, schedule content, or B,
mhm.
regularly dedicate time
Yeah.
regularly on a daily basis to post it. Whatever works for you. You are not a social media marketer who needs to plan out the
Mhm.
whole month and schedule all these things, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that is one thing that you really gotta ask yourself, like, how does my work style relate and connect to
Mhm.
this? Because I think Nick Bennett over at AirMe mentioned this recently, how the way he works has to change as he ages and learns and grows, and the way he
Yeah.
lives changes, right? When I first met him, he was not a father. Now he's a
Mhm.
father, right? He was not a homeowner. Now he's a homeowner, right?
Yeah.
He was a mid-level employee. Now he's senior leadership, right?
Mhm.
So the what he needs to prioritize and focus changes, so he
Yeah.
batches more content together, right? But Nick also is open about this too. He's a lot like me. He likes to write his content on the fly. We have
Yeah.
inspiration that hits randomly. So we both don't, he batch makes content, but he also dedicates the space for him to, write something, save it as a draft. So do I.
Mhm.
I do that
Yeah.
too. There are days where I batch my content, and then if I have a good idea, but okay, well, Evan, you
Yeah.
just posted, or it's 1 o'clock in the morning. This is not a good time to post.
Yeah.
I'll write it and I'll save it for later, right? So
Mhm.
I don't sit there behind a tool and schedule out one post every single day for weeks at a time. I
Mhm.
used to though.
Mhm.
So just there is no right or wrong answer for everyone here listening to this.
Yeah.
It's learn your options, try your options, and whatever works best for you, do it. All this advice about maximizing views and comments and engagement, right? Like, listen, you can, it's really splitting hairs there.
Yeah.
You're gonna take all this time studying and stressing out just so you can get a 1% boost in views over the course of a
Yeah.
week. Really? Calm down.
I do I think that's kind of interesting. Like the focus on especially like getting viral content, or like focusing on a certain follower account, especially when it's like we're talking about, okay, like growing a brand to leverage a career or like some kind of side
Yeah.
business. Because then it's like, okay, if my brand needs to be like very memorable, to people who would potentially hire me or like contract me, work with me, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then also trying to balance that with like content that is going to appeal to a lot of people. I think sometimes those focuses can be really, really separate. But what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? Like in terms of creating a brand that's super memorable, but then still trying to kind of balance it with people
Yeah.
actually seeing what you write.
It's all about ROI. It's all about
Mhm.
where does it matter to put your most effort, for someone who does this as their job, as part of their
Yeah.
job. Yeah, those vanity metrics aren't so vanity anymore, right?
Yeah.
They're useful.
Mm.
But to someone who's like, I'm just trying to network and grow my career, then
Mm.
yeah, the vanity metrics don't really matter. It's
Yeah.
more about the who and the why and the what, less of the how many, you know?
Mm.
So and it's also it's a spectrum. It's not this or that. It's okay to care a little bit. Like, okay, my post used to get 10,000 views, and
Mm.
not that I care about getting more, but they're dipping down to 5K. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm doing something wrong. That's valid,
Yeah.
right? But you don't gotta be like, okay, I'm at 10,000 views, and if I don't get to 11,000 average in the next week or two, I'm gonna jump off a bridge, right? That is somebody else's job to worry about that, right? In the context of
Yeah.
this event, where we're talking about advancing your career, you're
Mm.
probably here because you want to advance your career. From people who do this as part of
Mm.
their job, they're not here because they're already doing it. I'm only
Yeah.
here because I already know how to do it, right? So that's why I'm on the screen. So it's you have to really ask yourself, what is the priority? What am I trying to get out of this? Because then that will
Mm.
tell you what you need to give a damn about.
Mm. Arshana asked, I might have missed it, but do you share the recording of this event? Yes, we do. If you did register, which you did because you're here near me, you'll get the recording sent to you tomorrow in your email inbox. It is also on LinkedIn, but email is usually a little bit more convenient. So if you do need to watch it tomorrow, you definitely can. Okay, let me just go back to these questions that are in the Q&A. Okay, let's see. Kimberly asked, how do you manage staying active on various platforms? For instance, I do a good job of keeping up on LinkedIn messages, comments, but I'm in a bunch of Slack groups, including RevGenius. Thank you, Kimberly. um, that legitimately interests me, but I struggle to keep up.
Time blocking really helps. Yeah, blocking out
Mhm.
your time. But also, once again, let's talk about the ROI factor again, right? I want to
Yeah.
be more active on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. People hear me bring that up
Yeah.
all the time. I have come to the unfortunate conclusion weeks and months ago. Like, I'm never going to be as active on those platforms as I am on LinkedIn because
Yeah.
I just get such strong ROI from LinkedIn right now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So right, so I don't disregard those platforms. I still make time like maybe on a weekly or monthly basis to do stuff
Mhm.
over there. But I put my effort where my highest amount of ROI is,
Mhm.
and just be really careful of the comparison factor, right?
Yeah.
When you look at Gary Vaynerchuk, he's got a whole team behind him. It looks like it's just him, but that's the point. It's supposed to
Yeah.
look like it's just him, right? Look at Nick Bennett. He's got a team of people that help with editing the content and list goes on, and
Mhm.
it's his full-time job, right? So he
Yeah.
can do this, right? I don't have that budget and that luxury, you know. I
I
am
don't either.
right. So just give yourself permission to understand that you're working
Yeah.
with different kitchen and different set of tools and different ingredients than these people, and focus on what brings you the most ROI, right?
Mhm.
um and Eric, by the way, that has been proven to be a lie. Eric says that Gary does now, but he didn't. Gary uses AI tools. Most of his channels are actually operated by AI.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it repurposes the content. So it is him, but it's he makes it once and then gets repurposed 55,000 times basically. So it's
Mm,
not him, but it is him. And when I say team, well, somebody has to build and maintain that tool, and that's his team.
yeah.
So yeah, that's fine, Eric. It's okay. People lie. So, but yeah, so one of the things that I always really care about is just making
Mhm.
sure you understand your priorities and what you're
Yeah.
trying to get out of something. Yeah, that's really important. And that is one of the most powerful things that you can do for advancing your career. Because also, if you're really good at focusing on what moves the needle the most, it will show to
Mhm.
hiring managers. I saw somebody
Yeah.
else asking, like, how do I get the attention of like big name employers and companies? This
Mhm.
is one of a multitude of things. If you can demonstrate your ability to project manage, time manage, and with ROI in mind
Mm,
in
yeah.
public, a smart hiring manager, and IBM and Microsoft, like they've got the budget. Their hiring managers are smart. They can put two and two together. You know, they can tell that you're moving the needle in the right direction with what you're doing because clearly it's working
Mhm.
for you in public, right? So trust me, they're working. And if they can't figure that out, you don't want to work there in the first place. That means they got bad hiring managers.
Is there, like, any difference, I guess, in approach for, like, someone like Jay who's asking about, being more employable and visible to, like, the really big players like Microsoft, like IBM, and then wanting more of a career in, like, the startup space, where hiring looks a little bit different?
Yeah, it's you're gonna have to tailor what you talk about a little bit, but the good news
Mhm.
is that should probably not be that difficult because it's probably also leaning into your interests and career
Yeah.
development also, right? Like I love startups. Phrasey is the latest stage tech company I've ever worked at. And we're still
Mhm.
technically a startup in the regards of stage, like when you look at like, businesses, compared to like a Fortune
Yeah.
500 company, right? But if we're looking at like a human being, my last company was a toddler.
Yeah.
We're probably like a high school graduate, maybe early college freshman, you
Mm.
know, but we're not Microsoft that is about to hit
Yeah.
retirement. You know what I mean? Like, so obviously, like, my content it takes me zero effort, but that's because it's who I am. Is geared towards that because I am interested in that, right? Somebody who's more
Mhm.
interested in working in a Fortune 500 company is probably going to naturally talk about it in the way that a Fortune 500 company would
Yeah.
talk, just because that's who they are innately. It's right. It's a
Mhm.
part of their identity. Um, so once again, I wouldn't fret too much about that one because
Yeah.
it's really trying to ask, what kind of job do I want? Do I want the scrappy startup or do I want the big company?
Mhm.
And what you want to probably also be what you're good at and what you'll gravitate towards, right? You'll really start taking stock. Go to your YouTube history and look at what kind of content's in your history.
Mhm.
Figure out what you naturally gravitate towards. Have a better relationship with yourself and understanding who you are. You'll probably
Yeah.
unlock the answer to that.
Thomas asked, and I'm not sure what these rules are. So Thomas, you may need to clarify in the chat, or Evan might know what you're talking about.
Let me take a look.
Okay, Thomas said two
Um,
questions. Do strategies like the 4-1-1 rule and the 70-20-10 rule still apply? When is how much too much?
so that's a content balancing. It's just like, how many times I talk
Mm.
about this or that or that. Um,
Oh, got it.
what
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I have a personal gripe with those rules. So they're helpful to a degree, right?
Mm.
But they also depend on your audience and what they're used to,
Mm.
and the
Yeah.
frequency of your content, right? So, um, and your brand. Like, there's a lot of moving parts. So,
Mm.
um, I would say find the rule or make the rule that works for you. I
Yeah.
follow a 50-30-20 rules, 50% content about business as a whole, right? Like
Mhm.
leadership and business. 30% in that community social selling, and then 20% in
Mhm.
like the philanthropy slash humor other category, you
Mm.
know.
Mhm.
And that's loose, give or take on the
Yeah.
weeks and the month. But like that's kind of the flow that I go with. But when you look at other people that I get compared to, the Daniel Smehas, the Zoe Harts, the Leslie
Mhm.
Vanettes, we all kind of have a similar balance. So it's what our audiences are accustomed to.
Yeah.
It's what so I would really just experiment with that, because you might need the 70-20-10. You might need the 50
Mhm.
30 20. You know, find your lookalikes, find your complementary creators in this space, find
Yeah.
the other people who have, complementary personal brands, and you don't have to follow the herd, but just see what's working and see what's not.
Mhm. Awesome.
Also, you don't need to reinvent the
Kimberly.
wheel. You
Yeah.
don't need to reinvent the wheel. But
Um,
RuPaul says on RuPaul's Drag Race, pick a silhouette that you know works and just do it. Just you don't got to reinvent the wheel. Just pick what you know works and stick to it.
okay, so Kimberly asked, what do you think of the idea of creating a signature at the bottom of your post with a personal hashtag on LinkedIn? I've pondered the idea, but selfishly hate to give up the post space.
um, if it's not going to sacrifice the quality of the content, I don't see why not.
Mhm.
I don't. I would need to know what the actual signature is to know if it's going to help
Mhm.
or hurt. But I I don't think I've ever seen a scenario where it hurts.
Mhm.
I also don't think I know many people that do that regularly, so
Mhm.
it would make you stand out. Um, I can only imagine it'd be for good reasons.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that actually. Like, who on my LinkedIn feed does that? And I think the only person who's really stuck out to me, I want to say it's Sam Brown, or someone that has like a little dinosaur or like a fish or a bear. I don't know, it's some kind of animal that they sign off with
Yeah,
that. And I always remember that. But I don't see a lot of people doing it. I feel like it can be like really memorable if you do it right though.
I think when we talk about having a signature, it can be as literal as what was just proposed, but it could
Mhm.
also just be something that's super unique to you, right? When you think of my
Mm,
content, I know people like Evan, your content is cutting. You don't just stab, you twist the dagger while it's in there. Like you can hear my snarky voice when you read my posts, right? I am proud to be snarky. I know
mm,
when I'm right. I know when I'm wrong. I'm not closed-minded, but like
yeah,
I've got the paycheck, the bank account, the credit score, and the job titles, and the rapport, and the acumen, and the awards to prove that I do have objective evidence that I'm good at this. So therefore,
mhm,
I will clearly talk and act like it.
yeah,
So right, and I'm not nice about it, and I don't care. So right, but that's my brand. That's
yeah,
people love that. The people who I like tend to also like that. You and
yeah,
me get along because you and I both know it's a shtick. It's a shtick. The whole thing is a shtick. I'm incredibly empathetic, almost to a
of
fault,
course.
right? But I'm the first, but God, I hate people. But I'm also the person sobbing in the movie theater the minute a dog gets too close to the road.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna. It's irony and hypocrisy intentionally, right? There's
mm,
layers. So
yeah,
fine. So like that is my signature. That
mm,
is, you go, oh, that was an Evan post.
yeah,
So it can be as literal as the emoji. It could be as literal as a signature sign off, or
mm,
it could maybe it could also just be the way that you present yourself. Look
yeah,
at John Selig. Every post he makes is a literal pun. Every post is a pun. Zoe Hart, every post that she makes is like a super organized brain dump. You know,
yeah,
it's yeah, there's also like a melody to it. There's such a effervescent flow to the way that she writes.
mhm,
I know and also like her posts range from 2 sentences to 2 books.
yeah,
There's no gray area, right? It's either a behemoth or a tweet, right?
mhm,
And that is how you know it's a Zoe post, right?
yeah,
And her refusal to use caps correctly, which is
yeah,
intentional. That's all, and she knows it. She'll be the first one to say it. That is
yeah,
intentional.
of
Yeah.
course. Um, Okay, I love that. Definitely, like the focus on making your posts memorable, not just by like using a signature or anything, but just like in your own writing style. Which I think is actually a lot easier than we think that it's going to be because just by
Yeah.
default, like we all have our own very like unique personalities and ways of speaking. And if we can like could just kind of translate that into what we're writing, I think it comes across as very natural,
Yeah.
without having to try too hard, honestly.
Mhm.
Okay. So we only have a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that we cover like personal branding mistakes. What are like the biggest mistakes that you see from people? And what should we definitely avoid?
It's really common with sales reps. It's really common with people that this is not their job to
Yeah.
do, but they get encouraged to do it, right? So we've
Mm.
had a lot of people talk about what if my boss doesn't like it? Let's talk about the reverse of my boss loves it so much, but I don't know what to do with the fact that they love it because I'm
Oh,
bad at
yeah.
it myself, right? That happens all the time. So sales reps all the time are like, well, oh,
Mm.
I'm making a personal brand. I'm like, honey, you're sharing everything that the marketing team makes.
Oh, yeah.
That's not a personal brand. It's also not what the marketing team asked for, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, no, the marketing team wants us to hit like and comment and share. No, I don't. I want you to talk about these things in your own voice, and then maybe in
Yeah.
the comments link back to it or allude to
Yeah.
it or something, right? I'm not. I mean, I'm not gonna say no. You can't comment, share, and like, but that's not the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So that is it's the and I'm not blaming the sales reps because
Yeah.
actually why I work at Phrasey is to enable the sales reps on how to not make that mistake because I think a lot of
Mm.
them think they're doing it correctly.
Yeah.
I don't
The
think that they're
intention
stupid.
is
It's
there.
yeah, the
Yeah.
intention is there, and honestly, oftentimes too, the ability is there too. They go,
Mhm.
but it looks so hard, and you must have spent so many hours
Yeah.
making that post. Like, I was like, I wrote that in the time it took to go from the first floor to the eighth floor of this building in the elevator. It is not as hard as you think.
Mm.
So it doesn't need to be polished. It's not a blog on phrasey.co. It's
Yeah.
Evan's post. Like,
Yeah.
it's just some stuff I wrote while I was stoned in the shower last night at 10 p.m. and saved as a draft when I got out. Like, relax, y'all. So
Mm.
my job is to help the salesperson. So
Yeah.
if you were a salesperson in this call and you were trying to figure out how the hell do I not do the same thing that Evan just complained about because clearly it pisses off marketers and marketers are so jaded and tired of talking about it, we just pretend you're doing it correctly at this point because we're sick of it. Ask a marketer on your team that is good at
Mm.
this for help.
Mhm.
Yeah, because they'll trust me. Oh, thank God somebody wants to get better at this. Because the more you do it, the more eyeballs will get seen on what marketing is doing, right?
Yeah.
And then the more that those eyeballs get on the stuff the marketing's doing, the more leads they generate. And the more leads marketing
Mhm.
generates, well, they get their bonus check. So trust me, we
Yeah.
want to help you just as much as you want to get good at it. So just ask us. Just ask us. That's my mistake. Ask for help.
Mhm.
Ask. Like, Jesus.
You heard it here first. Ask your marketing people.
I clearly have had 6 conversations about this very topic today, actually, before this, and I'm probably gonna have, like, 2 more after this, so,
Mm.
um, you're getting the unfiltered version because I've been filtered all day.
Yeah. So, what is like most interesting to you or what excites you the most about like this whole idea of personal branding within like professional communities like LinkedIn? Like now that we're seeing it as more like taken a little bit more seriously as a real
Yeah.
lead generation tool, like as a real role in evangelism, in content, all of that. What are your thoughts?
It's so much fun because while it's being taken more seriously, we're still writing the rule book on this, right? We are barely scratching the surface of what can be done with roles like this and with these kind of plays, whether it is your job or a part of your job or just for your own personal and
Mhm.
professional development. Maybe I'm a nerd. I'm also an extreme extrovert, so I am fully aware of the bias in what I'm about to say, but
Mhm.
it's fun. I find
Yeah.
it fun. Um, no 2 days are the same as a result. I get to do such cool things with cool people, such as
Mhm.
yourself, right? I get to just meet people. I also get to learn faster and
Yeah.
more in less time and also with less effort. Like, because I don't have to seek out the information. Now it's just being thrown at me. Like every time I log on LinkedIn to make content, congratulations, I'm also consuming content
Yeah.
too, right? So like it just I don't have to worry about, how all these sales reps when they started a new company, like, okay, what media outlets or what
Mhm.
do you follow to
Yeah.
learn about X, Y, and Z? I never have to ask that.
Mhm.
It's always thrown in my face, and it's also invited. I want it
Yeah.
because I've also aligned my career with my personal interests and my personal goals.
Mhm.
I am not going to attempt to pronounce it, but there's a concept. It's kind of like the Maslow hierarchy of needs, but it's popular in Japanese culture. Starts with an I. I'm not going to try to pronounce it.
Oh,
Uh,
Ikagi? I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
all I know is it sounds
I
like the
think it's that.
Korean pop music show called Inkigayo, but, Inkigayo, yeah, but it's not the same thing at all. Anyways, that's like the TRL of South Korea, basically. Nothing to do with this. But the point being, personal branding really only does well if you're aligning it with who you are, 'cause that's why it's called personal
Mhm.
branding, you
Yeah.
know? So that's what I love about it. It brings me such personal fulfillment. But then again, I'm a nerd. Like, I talk about what I do the same way the drag queens talk about doing drag, the same way that singers talk about singing, the way the actors talk about acting, right? It
Mhm.
brings me joy. It's oxygen to me.
Yeah.
Um, I would do it for free. Hell, I do it for free. I'm doing this for free. I love
Mhm.
doing this so
Yeah.
much.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any more comments in the chat or anything or questions that we do need to go over. But I do want to make sure if anyone has questions, maybe they were watching the show or they catch the replay later, like, can they reach out to you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah.
Just let us know.
Of course, make sure you follow Phrasee, Phrasee, on LinkedIn. You'll be seeing more of me and our team there soon. We have some exciting stuff coming up within the month that I wish I could talk to you about more, but follow us there. You can follow me on LinkedIn. As my name shows, Evan Patterson, I should pop up pretty easily as well. And then you can also, go to my link tree to find me elsewhere and more content. linktr.ee/Evan Patterson. Yeah, and also, of course, if you're ever in Chicago, DM me, hit me up. If I don't think you're a creep or an asshole, we can get drinks. And if you don't drink, we can get coffee. We can go to the beach. We can do whatever. So, but yeah, that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you a million times for being here today, Evan. It has been super fun. I cannot believe we just spent a whole hour just chatting and everything. Always feels like 5 minutes.
And yes,
But
Kimberly, she asked if it's the link where it says the cool kids. Yes, it's that link. Yes, yes, she found
awesome.
it. But
Perfect.
no,
And
it's
thank
always
you,
a fun
Kimberly,
work with
for
you.
sending in such awesome questions. And thank you, everyone, for sending in such awesome questions. But
Of course.
okay, so if you were watching this and you are not a Rev Genius member, go to revgenius.com. You can join me in our Slack. Evan's in there sometimes. There's a lot of cool people.
Slammed busy.
So
I wish, once again, like Kimberly, I wish I could be in there more too.
yeah.
But some of us have the
Uh,
audacity to not be born independently wealthy, so we have day jobs.
I know. See, that's why I work for Rev Genius now. So it's okay. It's just
That's
a
her
matter of
excuse.
time. We're going to steal you eventually. Alrighty. I
I'll
will
make sure to
see you
tell Jen
guys.
Lee and Perry Mom that.
Yeah.
Second
It's
week here,
okay.
already getting
You
poached.
can send them to me. Like, yeah. Alrighty. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much for watching. It has been so much fun, and I will